It is the year 2027, hour zero of a conflict in the Taiwan Strait. Before a single Marine lands on a beach or a single F-35 fires a shot, the sky above the Western Pacific turns black with ordnance. From mobile launchers deep inside the Chinese interior, hidden in the mountains of Gansu and the forests of Fujian, hundreds of DF-26 Guam Killer ballistic missiles arc into the stratosphere. They are not flying blindly. They are guided by a constellation of reconnaissance satellites and high-altitude drones. They are traveling at Mach 18, closing the distance to their targets in minutes. Their target is not a ship. It is a coordinate. 12 minutes later, Andersen Air Force Base on Guam ceases to exist as a functional military entity. The Patriot batteries fire their interceptors, but they are simply overwhelmed by the volume of fire. For every interceptor, there are 3 incoming warheads. The fuel farms, holding millions of gallons of aviation fuel, ignite in a firestorm visible from space. The runways are cratered by submunitions specifically designed to prevent repair. The hangars housing the B-2 Spirits, billions of dollars of stealth technology, are collapsed under the weight of high-explosive penetrators. Simultaneously, Kadena Air Base in Japan is saturated by thousands of short-range cruise missiles. The U.S. 7th Fleet, forward deployed to Yokosuka, is trapped in port, burning at the pier, unable to sortie before the harbor mouth is mined. In less than 20 minutes, 70 years of American forward basing strategy has been vaporized. The first island chain is not a wall, it is a cage. And the second island chain, Guam, is a kill zone. The U.S. military has been blinded, crippled, and decapitated before it could even issue the order to fight. But 4,000 kilometers to the south, deep in the Australian outback, the engines of American B-52 Stratofortresses are turning. They are outside the range of the barrage. They are safe. The pilots are running their pre-flight checks in bunkers that were built only 3 years prior. As the smoke rises over Guam, these bombers lift off from RAAF Base Tindal, loaded with long-range anti-ship missiles, preparing to launch the counterattack that will save the Western Alliance. This is not science fiction. This is the wargame scenario that keeps Pentagon planners awake at night. It is the scenario that drives every single decision being made in Washington today. And it explains the single most important geopolitical shift of our lifetime. Welcome to Doctrine of War. Today we are dissecting the death of the old Pacific Order and the birth of Fortress Australia. The mainstream media tells you a simple, lazy story about what is happening in the Northern Territory. They say, the US is expanding its footprint in Australia to project power. They frame it as an occupation, or a deputy sheriff arrangement where Australia dutifully does America's bidding to keep the peace. They are wrong. The reality is far more desperate, far more urgent, and far more flattering to Australian strategic importance. The United States is not expanding into Australia because it wants to. It is moving to Australia because it has to. The thesis for today is this: Guam is dead. Japan is vulnerable. The Philippines is compromised. And Australia has become the unsinkable aircraft carrier that the entire Western world is hiding behind. We are going to break down the physics of the missile war, the industrial logic of HMAS Sterling, and why the road to Taiwan now runs through Darwin. Section 1. The mathematics of defeat. To understand why the US Marines are in Darwin and why US bombers are in Tindal, you have to understand the brutal math of modern missile warfare. For decades, the US strategy was forward defense. You put your troops right on the enemy's doorstep, in Korea, in Japan, and Okinawa. You dared them to attack. That strategy relied on one foundational assumption: that the enemy could not hit your bases with precision, or at least not with enough volume to matter. That assumption died with the introduction of the PLARF, the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force. Let's talk about the DF-26. This is not just a missile, it is a strategic checkmate. It is a road-mobile, intermediate-range ballistic missile. It has a confirmed range of 4,000 kilometers. It carries a 1,200 kilogram warhead, which can be conventional or nuclear. Crucially, it is accurate to within 10 meters. China has built hundreds, potentially thousands, of them. Now look at a map of the Pacific. Guam is roughly 2,900 kilometers from the Chinese coast. It is well within the fat part of the DF-26 engagement envelope. If war starts, China doesn't need to sink the US Navy at sea. They just need to destroy the logistics hub that feeds it. Guam is that hub. It stores the fuel, the bombs, the spare parts, and the communications nodes for the entire Pacific theater. American war planners know this. They have run the simulations hundreds of times. In almost every iteration where the US tries to fight a war from Guam and Japan, they lose. The physics are against them. The runways are cratered faster than the rapid runway repair teams can pour concrete. The fuel tanks are destroyed faster than tankers can arrive from California. The air defenses, Patriot and THAAD batteries, are overwhelmed by saturation attacks. You cannot shoot down 500 incoming hypersonic warheads with 50 interceptors. It is simple arithmetic. This is the mathematics of defeat. The first and second island chains have become anti-access/area denial, A2/AD, zones. Anything inside that zone is dead on arrival. The forward bases that were once assets are now liabilities, traps for American personnel and equipment. So the Pentagon asked a terrifying question: where can we go? Where can we park a B-52 where it won't be blown up in the first 5 minutes? They looked at the map. Philippines? Too close, too politically volatile. Singapore? Too small, no strategic depth. One lucky shot takes out the whole island. Hawaii? Too far away, 8,000 kilometers from the fight means a bomber needs multiple mid-air refuelings just to get to the battlefield. Then they looked south. They looked at a continent-sized island with a stable Western democracy, a technologically advanced population, and, most importantly, strategic geography that defies the laws of physics that apply elsewhere. They looked at Australia. This is where the narrative flips. The US military isn't occupying the Northern Territory. They are retreating to it. They are seeking sanctuary behind the tyranny of distance. Let's look at RAAF Base Tindal. Located 300 kilometers south of Darwin, deep in the bush. It is roughly 4,500 to 5,000 kilometers from the launch sites of the Chinese rocket force. That extra 1,000 kilometers of distance changes everything. It puts Tindal at the very edge or just outside the effective range of the current generation of Chinese ballistic missiles. To hit Tindal, China would need to develop longer-range missiles, like the DF-27, or utilize bombers that would have to fly through contested airspace. The physics of attacking Tindal are exponentially harder than attacking Guam. The flight time is longer. The warning time is greater. The accuracy degrades. But Tindal isn't just about range. It's about depth. Guam is a tiny rock. You have nowhere to hide. If you miss the runway, you hit the hangar. Tindal is surrounded by millions of square kilometers of empty red dirt. You can disperse assets. You can hide fuel trucks in the bush. You can build dummy runways to confuse satellite targeting. You can absorb punishment that would sink a smaller island. This is why the United States is spending hundreds of millions of dollars, not Australian dollars, American tax dollars, to upgrade Tindal. They are building a squadron operations facility. They are expanding the apron to park 6 B-52 Stratofortresses simultaneously. They are building jet fuel storage tanks that hold millions of liters of JP-8. The B-52 is the key here. These are not tactical fighters, they are strategic heavy bombers. From Tindal, a B-52 can take off, fly to the Luzon Strait, launch 20 LRASM long-range anti-ship missiles, and return to Australia without ever entering the Chinese air defense bubble. A single sortie from Tindal can sink a Chinese carrier group. This capability does not exist anywhere else in the world. If the US loses Tindal, they lose the ability to project heavy air power into the South China Sea. Without Tindal, the B-52s are pushed back to Hawaii or Diego Garcia, tripling their flight time and cutting their sortie rate by 2/3. And then there is Darwin. The Marine Rotational Force Darwin, MRFD, is not there to protect Australia from invasion. That is a fundamental misunderstanding of their mission. The Marines in Darwin are a stand-in force. The modern U.S. Marine Corps is pivoting away from desert warfare to expeditionary advanced base operations, ABO. In the event of a conflict, these 2,500 Marines, a number that is likely to grow to a full brigade, are not going to dig foxholes in the Northern Territory. They are going to load onto high-speed transports and scatter across the islands to the north, Timor, Indonesia, the Philippines. They will set up mobile missile batteries on tiny islands, fire at Chinese ships, and then move before they can be targeted. They are a rapid reaction force that is prepositioned behind the shield of Australia, ready to jump forward the moment the shooting starts. Darwin is the marshalling yard for this strategy. It is the Geneva of the Pacific, the safe zone where the force assembles before plunging into the fire. This is the Fortress South concept. Australia acts as the barracks, the bunker, and the magazine for the Western Alliance. It is the only place where the US can stockpile the mountain of iron, artillery shells, missiles, fuel, needed to fight a high-intensity war safe from the initial knockout blow. But air power and Marines are only half the story. The real game changer, the strategic checkmate, is happening underwater on the other side of the continent. If you are starting to understand why Australia's geography makes it the most valuable piece of real estate in the 21st century, hit that like button and subscribe to Doctrine of War. We are stripping away the political rhetoric to show you the cold, hard military reality of why the superpowers are pivoting to the Indo-Pacific. Your support keeps this analysis independent and raw. The industrial fortress. We need to talk about HMAS Sterling and the SRF West, Submarine Rotational Force West. Most people think AUKUS is just about Australia buying nuclear submarines in the 2030s. That is the headline for the public. The real strategic shift is happening right now, at Garden Island in Western Australia. Under the SRF West Agreement, the United States and the United Kingdom are rotating their own nuclear attack submarines, SSNs, through Perth. Up to 4 U.S. Virginia-class and 1 British Astute-class boat will be operating from HMAS Sterling as a forward-deployed force. Why is this happening? Because of the tyranny of the commute. If a U.S. submarine based in Pearl Harbor wants to patrol the South China Sea, it takes roughly 10 to 12 days to transit across the Pacific. That is 24 days round trip of dead time. Time spent commuting, not fighting. It wears out the crew, it burns reactor life, and it exposes the boat to detection. By basing the submarines in Perth, the transit time to the choke points of the Sunda Strait and Lombok Strait, the gateways to the South China Sea, is cut dramatically. It effectively doubles the time on station for the U.S. submarine fleet. A boat out of Perth can spend 40 days on patrol instead of 20. It acts as a force multiplier without building a single new ship. But the real value of Sterling isn't just berthing, it's maintenance. This is the industrial secret that nobody discusses. Nuclear submarines are the most complex machines ever built by humans. They operate in a hostile environment, under immense pressure. They break. They need specialized parts, nuclear-certified welders and radiological controls. There are only a handful of places on Earth that can fix a Virginia-class submarine. Until recently, they were all in the United States. Guam has a submarine tender, a ship that fixes other ships, but as we established, Guam is a target. If Guam is destroyed and a U.S. submarine takes damage in the South China Sea, where does it go? Back to Hawaii? That's 8,000 kilometers with a damaged hull or a failing reactor pump. It's a death sentence for the crew. Australia is building the only nuclear submarine maintenance facility in the Southern Hemisphere. The $8 billion investment in HMAS Sterling is creating a strategic spare tire for the U.S. Navy. If war breaks out, Sterling becomes the most critical naval base in the world outside of the continental United States. It is the only place where a crippled submarine can limp in, get patched up, reload its Tomahawks and get back into the fight. This turns Western Australia into a global target, yes. But it also turns it into a global necessity. The U.S. Navy literally cannot sustain a high-intensity submarine war in the Indian Ocean or South China Sea without the industrial capacity of Perth. Without Sterling, the U.S. submarine force is tethered to Pearl Harbor, and their operational tempo collapses. This is why you are seeing Australian sailors training in U.S. shipyards right now. They aren't just learning to fix future Australian boats, they are being trained to fix current American boats. It is total integration. The Royal Australian Navy is becoming a maintenance division for the U.S. Pacific Fleet. So, what does this mean for Australia? For decades, the Australian psyche has been dominated by cultural cringe. The idea that Australia is a junior partner, a loyal follower that sends troops to America's wars in exchange for protection. That dynamic is over. The Fortress Australia reality has inverted the power relationship. The United States now needs Australia just as much as, if not more than, Australia needs the United States. Consider the leverage. Without access to RAAF Tindal, the U.S. bomber force is pushed back to Diego Garcia and Hawaii, effectively castrating its strike range and reaction time. Without access to HMAS Sterling, the U.S. submarine force loses its forward sustainment hub and half its operational efficiency. Without the fuel reserves being built in Darwin, the U.S. fleet runs dry in weeks. Without the vast training ranges of the Northern Territory, ranges larger than some European countries, the U.S. Marines have nowhere to practice high-end combined arms warfare. Australia has become the kingmaker of the Pacific. It holds the keys to the only fortress capable of surviving the opening salvo of World War III. This gives Canberra unprecedented political leverage. When you are the landlord of the only bunker in town, you get to set the rent. And the rent isn't just money, it's technology transfer. This explains why the U.S. is willing to sell Virginia-class submarines to Australia, the crown jewels of American technology, never before shared with anyone, not even the British during the Cold War. They aren't doing it out of charity. They aren't doing it because they like Australian accents. They are doing it because they need the Australian Navy to be capable enough to defend the fortress. They need Australia to be a sovereign partner capable of fighting alone if the US is tied down elsewhere. The force posture initiatives are a tacit admission that the US military is overstretched, vulnerable, and facing a peer competitor that has negated their traditional advantages. They are outsourcing their strategic depth to the Australian continent. This brings with it enormous risks. By hosting the bombers and the submarines, Australia guarantees that it will be on the target list for Chinese missiles. There is no such thing as neutrality when you are the gas station, the repair shop, and the aircraft carrier for the belligerent. If a B-52 takes off from Tindal to bomb a Chinese fleet, Tindal becomes a legitimate target of war. But the alternative, isolation, is worse. In a world of hypersonic missiles, gray zone coercion, and authoritarian expansionism, being a target is dangerous, but being irrelevant is fatal. Irrelevant nations get ignored, they get blockaded, they get coerced. Relevant nations get a seat at the table. Australia has chosen to be relevant. It has chosen to become the garrison state of the free world. Conclusion and sign-off: the next time you see a headline about US Marines landing in Darwin, or B-52s parking in Tindal, do not think of it as an occupation. Do not let the simple media narratives fool you. Think of it as an admission of vulnerability. The mighty American empire, which once strode across the Pacific like a colossus, is pulling back. It is pulling back from the exposed rim of Asia, retreating from the kill zones of the first island chain, and digging in behind the shield of the Australian continent. Guam is dead. Long live Fortress Australia. The question is not whether this strategy will work. The US has no other choice. The question is whether the Australian public understands the magnitude of the bet their government has made. They have offered up their land as the ultimate fallback position for the West. It is a strategy of survival, but it is also a strategy that ensures if the missiles fly, they will fly south. Thanks for watching Doctrine of War. Does the Fortress Australia strategy make you feel safer, knowing you hold the keys to the alliance? Or does it make you feel like a target, knowing the crosshairs are now centered on the Northern Territory? Let me know in the comments below. Stay sharp, stay realistic, and we'll see you in the next one.